A very good afternoon, everyone present here at the Cryosphere Pavilion, COP26, Glasgow, and for those joining us from across the world virtually. I'm Pradyumna Rana. I'm a climate change adaptation and governance analyst at ICIMOD, and today I would like to welcome you all to this session on HKH Science and Solutions. I will be hosting, moderating, and presenting at the end, so please kindly bear with me. To give you a brief about this session, we have a series of presentations, first providing you an overview of the science and climate change in the HKS region, followed by a set of solutions from the region. To begin, and not taking too much of time as we are already running late, I would like to invite Isabella Kozel, who is the Deputy Director General of ECMOD, to set the stage for this session. Our presentation is titled HKH Cryosphere Science and Adaptation Solutions.
Thank you, Pradyumna, and good afternoon and good evening to those who are online. It's great to be standing here today and taking this presentation, as today is Science and Innovation Day at COP26, and I have just come from a very exciting meeting hosted by the Adaptation Research Alliance, where there have been many more pledges to science and innovation today, which is excellent news for us and for me, who has been in this area for quite a while. So it's great to see this momentum going. And of course, it's also Gender Day today. And I'm proud to say that our Cryosphere lead at ICIMOD in Nepal is a woman. So that's quite poignant for us today as well. So moving on with the presentation. So today we are going to talk about cryosphere science and adaptation solutions. And of course, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is one of the most fragile and most vulnerable we've lost our presentation. One of the most fragile and most vulnerable in the world. And it is so much more so because of the coincidence of this fragility with a very large population, both within the region but downstream of the region. And this is why the science is so important. We must understand the risks, the downstream risks from the impacts of climate change on the cryosphere. Okay, so we have our presentation back online. So our region is an enormous asset to 1.9 billion people. In some figures, we quote up to 3 billion people rely on the waters of the Himalayas. I'm going to repeat that. It's 1/3 of the world's population that rely on the Hindu Kush Himalaya. That is a staggering amount of people. And I think we should all reflect on this and how important it is for us to understand how climate change is impacting on the region, and particularly on the cryosphere and the implications of that on these huge numbers of people. And so in terms of where we are at, in terms of the climate context in the region, we have rapid warming, pretty much similar to other regions. But what is unique about the Hindu Kush Himalaya is that we have elevation dependent warming. So we have a more extreme rise of temperatures in the region. And this is a critical issue for us. There are precipitation extremes which are increasing, and we are getting more intense and more erratic rainfall, which of course has severe implications on the incidence of landslides when you have or floods and droughts. Warming and precipitation extremes will increase in the future, and we are expecting rainfall to increase by up to 25%. And that increase, coupled with a greater degree of variability, is a very serious issue for the 1.9 billion people living downstreams. So we already know that 1.5 degrees warmer is too hot for the Hindu Kush Himalaya. And what we can see here is that in a 1.5 degrees world, glaciers will lose 1/3 of their volume by 2100. But if we don't reach our targets for emissions reductions and we continue under current emission trends, we will lose up to 2/3 of our glaciers. That is a staggering amount. And snow-covered areas and snow volumes will also decrease and snow elevations will rise. And the runoff peak from snow melt will be stronger and it will occur much earlier in the year, which will have obvious implications for farmers and agriculture. Yet, despite all this, we do have very little understanding because we have not been able to invest in measuring what is really happening in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Very few glaciers are measured in the Hindu Kush Himalaya compared with other regions. There are glaciers that are monitored and measured in Nepal, but they have only a few years of data. For example, the Chota Shigri glacier in India has 20 years of regular mass balance measurements, but this is the only glacier in the region that has this kind of record of measurements. And so why are there so few glacier measurements in the Hindu Kush Himalayas? So many of the glaciers fall above 5,000 meters. They are remote, they are challenging to access. Working at high elevations is difficult and dangerous. And we have many issues around the glaciers crossing borders. And so we have challenges of bringing data together due to transboundary issues and political challenges. However, despite the lack of data, one fact is coming out more and more clearly, and that the field measurements that do exist show consistent glacier shrinkage. And so here we have data that shows the same pattern, that we have consistent glacier loss right across the Hindu Kush Himalaya, where you can see that the red and the amber and the yellow markers are showing those that are shrinking. There are some in the Karakoram range that are increasing, but even increasing glaciers have implications. But as you can see, this is very much in the minority. So we are also monitoring glaciers through remote sensing. So here we're also monitoring snow, and snowfall monitoring is also challenging. So snowfall has decreased in mountainous areas, especially at low elevations, and changes in snowmelt are affected when runoff is available for agriculture. Snowfall and snowmelt are also becoming far more unpredictable. So we're getting snowfall either much earlier or much later. And I think this year was a classic case of snowfall coming later in the season. And of course, permafrost is very widespread in the region. And permafrost, which is frozen ground, affects ground stability, hydrology, and biodiversity. And we have just started permafrost measurements in Humla, where a new high elevation road has been constructed. So we are now just starting out on monitoring what is happening with the permafrost. And we recently held a meeting where we brought together various permafrost experts. But the issue of melting permafrost is also a critical one, in that when the frozen ground starts to thaw, the risk of landslides is far higher. And so one other area of work that we've been engaging in is working with local communities to see how local communities are also observing changes in the cryosphere. So we have actually managed to find some areas of consensus between what the communities are seeing and what perceiving, as well as what our data is telling us. And you can see here in this slide that both sources of information confirm that the glaciers are melting. And then there is three other areas of agreement, which is about the changing timing of snowfall, the intensity of snowfall, and the changes in river discharge. So all these changes, whilst are being monitored through remotely sensed data and field measurements, but the communities are seeing these changes as well. And of course, in terms of the hazards, in terms of avalanches, floods, and landslides, there is a strong perception that the risk of these multiple hazards has increased. And so we've also been working together with the Langtang community to participate in hazard assessment. So we've been mapping local infrastructure, cultural sites, etc., using participatory methods. And finally, we've been also working with communities that are cut off during the winter season to help them adapt and cope with changing snowfall patterns, to help experiment how they can grow vegetables using solar panels. And we've also been working on glacier lake outburst floods. These are significant risks in the region. We have mapped over 200 that are potentially dangerous, and the challenges of managing the risks around these glacial lake outburst floods are challenging in of themselves. Communities won't move, etc. And so, adapting to glacial floods, we've been setting up various early warning systems that have been installed to ensure that we get information on the hazards as and when they arise. And men and women have both been participating in the training that we have been running. So in response, what are we doing? So in response to this science, we're working at 4 levels, and you'll hear more about some of the solutions as we progress through the session today. But we work at the local level, where we co-create solutions for local communities at the front line of these climate risks. But then to ensure that we can scale up these solutions, we work with our regional member countries and their governments to bring about a more enabling policy environment for adaptation. And then we work at the regional level, we foster regional collaboration, and we've brokered a ministerial declaration last year on the HKH call to action. And we also work internationally, and that's why we're here today, to raise and to amplify the voice of the mountain communities and the risks that they face, as well as those downstream. So thank you. I will pass over to Pradumnia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella, and sorry you had to rush towards the end because of the time. I would like to thank you for at least setting the tone for the upcoming presentations and the session. But also, I would like to make an announcement first. As we are running a little late, we will have a little bit of shift in the presentations. So, as per the schedule, we had Aberdeen University presenting next, but I would like to request David Schreier to come in and do his presentation. David is in London and he'll be only able to join us for a short while. That's why we're making this change. To give you a little bit background, of course, David is managing member of Visionary Future, and we at ICIMOD have partnered with Visionary Future, doing some exciting work around understanding the fintech ecosystem in the region, especially pertaining to climate finance. David, if you're there, I would like to hand over the floor to you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and take you through just a few thoughts on bridging the climate finance gap. This will be a very brief presentation, but it's a preview of a much longer report that we've been working on with ICIMOD around climate finance innovation in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. So progress is being made towards financial and digital inclusion in the region. If we look, for example, at fintech-enabled account ownership, you have countries like China and India that are approaching 80% account ownership penetration. You have countries like Bangladesh that are nearing 50% or more, and other countries in the region making great progress towards bringing more people into the system, both in terms of access to digital services, complying with UN Global Goal 9, as well as access to financial services. However, when we look at climate finance, we see that there are still large gaps. So developed nations have recently, within the last couple of years, allocated approximately $34 billion US to climate remediation in developing nations in Asia. But if we look at the identified needs for climate resilience, they're closer to $1.4 trillion US, not including Myanmar and China. And if we break that down, it varies obviously by nation, but a number of countries within the Hindu Kush Himalaya region have identified critical areas for climate adaptation and mitigation, and the funding gap is significant. So what do we do about that? Is it possible, for example, for fintech to help solve the climate finance gap? What could this look like? Well, one area is to apply advanced data and imaging to identifying critical areas of need, to help with flow of funds and allocation of resources. With new private sector entrants offering lower cost access to climate-related data and better AI modeling systems, we're seeing a new renaissance around advanced data and imaging. We're seeing the emergence of next-generation climate markets. So if we think of the carbon credits that were introduced in 1997 with the Kyoto meeting, that was the start of people beginning to think a little bit differently about climate and financial markets. More recently, and certainly announced at COP26, we've seen people talking about things like oxygen credits, and the idea that other dimensions of climate innovation could be introduced into broader ESG goals in financial markets. We also are seeing the emergence of new financial technology products. So, for example, you could create a catastrophe bond or a cat bond. This is a financial instrument that only pays out when a natural disaster occurs, perhaps climate linked, and it's associated usually with securitizing insurance products. So that's a fancy way of saying we're going to gather up the risks around, for example, poor farmers in the region and enable the financing of support in natural disasters. Where fintech can come in is both in looking at the assurance adjustment, in other words, determining that a catastrophic event actually occurred, and in facilitating flow of payments. So artificial intelligence and blockchain could help poor farmers and villagers in the region to access much needed financial resources for recovery following a climate-linked disaster. There are a number of policy interventions which can be introduced to help facilitate these kinds of innovations. Social impact bonds, for example, allow private sector and sort of innovative partners to step in and take on certain risks against social goals, supported with the knowledge that once certain key metrics are achieved, that governments will step in and assume the cost of those programs. We could see the introduction of certain climate taxes that would help underwrite innovation and climate resilience in the region. We could see other forms of innovative government-backed securities to underwrite a flourishing of fintech to support addressing this climate finance gap. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, credits and incentives for entrepreneurial action could stimulate private sector in a P3, public-private partnership, around generating impact on these critical goals. I'm David Schreier. We'll be issuing the report very shortly in its initial draft form, which is a diagnostic or an assessment of what's going on in the HKH region, to be followed by a broader set of recommendations around policy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, David. And very nice presentation introducing fintech and how it can be used in climate change. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, we are very happy and excited to be working with you on this work as well. And thanks a lot for joining us from London. Thank you. Now, moving on, I would like to invite Matthew for the next presentation on quenching the thirst at the foot of the giants, the Ice Stupa project. The presentation will be made by Matthew Spagnolo and Shaktiman Singh from Cryosphere and Climate Change Group, University of Aberdeen, Scotland, and Sonam Wangchuk, founding director of Himalayan Institution of Alternatives, Ladakh, India. Matthew, over to you.
We're just waiting 1 minute to load the presentation. Okay. Yeah, so, well, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us here today. It's a pleasure and an honor, really, to be here and presenting our project at this venue. And this project is very much a collaboration between the Ice Stupa team in Ladakh and the JNU in India and the Cryosphere and Climate Change Group at the University of Aberdeen. Still waiting for the presentation to come. Okay, here it is. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to thank you, just 3 people particularly who contributed most to this project. And this is Sonam, of course, who's the founder of the Ice Stupa project, but also Soheb at JNU and Millie at the University of Aberdeen. Soheb and Millie research is very much what is on stage today. And Soheb just finished his PhD and Millie just finished her MSc by research. So congratulations and thank you to you both. So today presentation, if this can move to the next slide. Can you move manually to the next slide? It doesn't seem to work from here. Yeah, so today's presentation is very much into 3 parts. First of all, my colleague Shaktiman will give an introduction of what the problem is. We're talking about how climate change is affecting mountain glacier in the wider Ladakh region in India. And then we'll look at solution, because this is what it is all about in this session, is looking at solution. And of course, as a scientist, I will start thinking about very sophisticated, technologically advanced solutions. But perhaps sometimes the solutions could be very simple. And the ice stupa is a prime example of something extremely simple, inexpensive, doesn't require any energy, and yet it is making a difference in the short term. Of course, this is not fixing the wider problem, that of mountain glacier retreating and water availability reducing for all the rural communities who live there. And for that, we need, of course, a bigger change that comes from our governments, the policymakers, but perhaps we can all contribute to that. And this leads to the final piece of the presentation, a video by Sonam with his pledge to live simply, which is simply taking the words of Gandhi, live simply so that others may simply live. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matteo. Glaciers around, sorry. So glaciers around the globe are excellent indicators of climate change. The changes incurred in them due to the rising temperature is quite visual. For example, the glacier shown here. Apart from being an indicator for climate change, the glaciers, particularly mountain glaciers, serve as an important source of freshwater supply around the globe. And when we talk about glaciers, it is mostly about the polar glaciers and big ice sheets. But mountain glaciers are equally important and, in fact, more sensitive to the changing climate, particularly due to their geographical location and small size. Today, I'm going to present results from the research work we have been doing in Ladakh, which is in Indian part of Himalaya. Several research studies have demonstrated a systematic rise in temperature throughout the high mountain Asia. And Ladakh region is no exception to that. As you can see here in this slide, that the difference in surface temperature is as high as 14 degrees Celsius for some areas over a period of merely 18 years. Now, this rise in temperature has an obvious impact on the glaciers in the region, which are mostly small and therefore are more sensitive to the changing climate. We mapped more than 2,000 glaciers to identify the frontal changes over a period of 42 years. The results suggest that most of these glaciers are retreating at a rate of more than 8 meters per year. Now, this rate might sound nominal to you, but imagine a glacier which is merely 1 or 2 kilometers long, and it experiences an overall retreat of 300 meters over a period of 42 years or so. This trend of change in length of the glaciers are similar to the change in their surface area as well. Out of the more than 2,000 glaciers that we mapped, around 1,900 experienced aerial loss of 20,000 square meters per year. Again, if we put it in perspective, on an average, it is a loss of 0.2 square kilometers for glaciers with size around 2 or 3 square kilometers, which is quite significant. The change in length and area are not a very good representation of overall health of a glacier. A more sophisticated parameter is altitude of the snow line, which is much better indicator of the changes in glacier ice mass. Snow line is basically the boundary between melting zone and accumulation zone on a glacier surface. Since it is more difficult to map the change in snow line altitude on a satellite image, we were able to map it on around 800 glaciers only. Another important point to note here is that contrary to the length or area of a glacier, positive change in snow line altitude means loss of glacier ice mass, and a negative change in snow line altitude means gain in glacier ice mass. We detected an overall mean increase of 2.5 meters in snow line altitude, which is quite substantial. Apart from the Ice Stupa project, we are also working on a very important component of the cryosphere, that is permafrost. There are a handful of studies, research studies in this part of the Himalaya related to permafrost. In a recently published paper, we have estimated around 60% of the overall study area to be detected as continuous or discontinuous permafrost. The role of this cryospheric component in the overall hydrological regime of the region is largely unknown. But rising temperature has definitely put all these cryospheric components under a lot of stress. The, the Ladakh region is categorized as a cold desert simply because of the small precipitation it receives throughout the year. The communities living here are largely dependent on agriculture for their livelihood. The change in cryosphere due to the unprecedented rise in temperature has posed a risk to the availability of water in the area. The changes are already evident in the valley, and one of the short-term solutions to this is strategic construction of ice stupas. Ice stupas are artificial glaciers and can store water during winter months and then moderate the water supply during spring and summer months.
Glaciers are an exceptionally good indicator of climate change. Simply put, as temperatures rise, glaciers shrink or disappear altogether. Glaciers are essential to the ecosystem of the mountains, and that includes the people who live there, the local rural communities who live there. In order to slow down this crisis and increase resilience, the Cryosphere and Climate Change Research Group of the University of Aberdeen has been working in collaboration with colleagues from Indian universities as well as locals of the Ladakh region on the Ice Stupa project.
This winter we have to roughly storage 2.5 million liter of water, and in summer this water currently goes to the steam water, and which used by 400 families in the down in the Pyang Valley.
Once those natural glaciers are gone, these kind of interventions or techniques, they are also not going to work anymore. So a bigger picture is that we have to kind of study the effect of climate change on natural glaciers and how we can mitigate them and how we can prolong the life of our natural glaciers.
Thank you, Matthew and Saktiman, for this wonderful presentation. And of course, watching Sonam Wangchukji, who's an inspiration not just in the region, but globally. It was really nice to see the Istupa project and how it's moving forward in Ladakh. I think it's a lesson learned for not just Ladakh, not just India, not the Hindu Kush Himalaya, but it can go beyond all across the world in the mountains. Now, as we're already running late, I would like to request the video, a pre-recorded presentation of Dr. Anu Lama and Anu Joshi Shrestha. This is on resilient entrepreneurship. It's a part of solutions that is taking place in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. Thank you.
Greetings to everyone who's listening to us at Glasgow and virtually from all over the world. We are Anu Lama and Anu Joshi, bringing you the mountain voices, particularly in the space of building back better mountain enterprises in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. And while presenting this, we are going to highlight some of the unique challenges, opportunities, as well as the learnings in our design and delivery of the innovative solutions against the climate shocks and pandemic. Just to give you the context, our mountain is very much vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And even 1.5 degree is very hot for us. We are also heading towards a warming world, which is going to be very much filled with disrupted monsoon and extreme events. And this is important for mountain enterprises because energy is important to drive economy and livelihoods, particularly for the MSME sectors. Now, we are emphasizing the importance of MSME sectors because they contribute significantly to the local and national economy of our region, as they form 95% of the private sectors. But there are silver lining to the story also, because emerging from this is an opportunity, particularly in the space of addressing climate shocks and pandemics from the perspective of building back better mountain enterprises. This is also helping them to contribute the Paris Agreement and stability of the respective countries. The opportunities are coming from with the perspective of transitioning the economy to the low carbon development pathways. And for this, we are suggesting 3 important areas to take into consideration. One is on renewable energy, the investment, followed by regional collaboration and ambitious climate actions. All these are important not only to build the resilience of the enterprises, but also limiting the global warming below 2 degrees centigrade and preferably below 1.5 degrees centigrade, but also equally important with the need to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So we have designed a solution pathways that is very much integral to innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment as 3 strategic pillars. Within innovations, we've established hubs to promote resilience of tourism and agricultural entrepreneurs by helping them to develop the bankable business plans. Equally important is that building their resilience, especially in regards to building their ability to absorb, adapt, and transform their business propositions so that they are able to create and sustain the economic, environmental, and social value proposition, strengthening the strategic orientations, and also promoting collaboration and cooperation along the entrepreneurial ecosystems. But last but not the least, investment, particularly the ROI framework development to leverage green finance is equally important. This gives a snapshot of an impact landscape from the interventions that is happening through pilot work that's being tested out here in Nepal. So 3 interventions are equally important in this space, right from enabling environment to establishing RE&E based businesses to promoting scale of investment. And where the results are showing, the results are very much apparent in the areas where we have been able to come up with the enabling policy instruments and platforms. We've been able to generate evidence to make informed decisions to build a sustainable business development, been able to incubate 16 business plans, bankable business plan, 8 of them have already been completed. Also been able to strengthen capacities and capabilities. And last but not least, very important is that we've been able to link with 3 banks who have already approved the business plan for the concessional loans. And also equally important is the cooperations at scale, where we are thinking of the need to really scale the pilot is through policy uptake, learning, replications, and investment. impact area where we are looking at is definitely improving access to energy and for the demand creation, creating new jobs, emission reduction, skills and entrepreneurship, public and private finances, partnership, and solutions at scale. Just to give you a snapshot of an impact story of two of our entrepreneurs, one is the original organic farm and farm stays. The other one is Sanskriti Farm and Research Center and Fulbari Homestay. These entrepreneurs are very much motivated in regards to integrating RE solutions as part of their business futures. The original organic farm wants to expand the sustainable supply chains in the food and farm sectors, as well as promote their farm stays, while Sanskriti Farm wants to really establish a RE, renewable energy demonstration park for recreation, research and learning. And what is interesting is that the seed fund that is provided during the FIDE intervention is becoming an important motivation factors to kickstart the whole idea of integrating RE technologies into the business as a short-term goal. Sangamji from Original Organic has able to really establish 30 cubic meters of biogas, which has been able to reduce his LPG gas uses by 5 in a month. Normally, he uses 10 cylinders per month to cater food in his restaurant. Whereas Sri Krishnaji's is really being benefited by the seed fund to really expand the energy RE capacities to 1 kilowatt solar systems, where he has now successfully been able to go off grid for the basic consumptions in the homestay lighting and office operations. But his long-term goal is definitely integrating different technology from green high-tech greenhouse to solar pump, solar panels, windmill. With this, I will really give the floor to my colleagues, Anu Joshi. Thank you.
Thank you, Anulama. And warm greetings to the world from Anu Joshi Shrestha, Value Chain and Enterprise Development Specialist from ICIMOD. Today, it is my pleasure to highlight a few of our work that ICIMOD has done over the past decade on small and micro entrepreneurship development to combat climate change by going green and building entrepreneurial capacity to be resilient. If you see the slide, over the past decade, we've evolved our work from focusing on market to really focusing on market niche natural products promotion, so that we could really target green recovery solutions and also ambitious climate actions. Then we really looked into climate change perspective, where we looked at climate resilient value chain and focused on from production to market, how climate has affected these value chains and what would be the solutions thereafter. Then we looked into transition low carbon development that as a global agenda that was really going on, and we focused on reducing risk, creating reference through pilots and innovations and building resilience, big resilience focus into the interventions that we made in enterprise development and entrepreneurship development area. We then focused on building resilient mountain solutions through entrepreneurial ecosystem development, where the ecosystem was a big focus in building all stakeholders coming together and working towards resilience building in various sectors and various nodes of value chain in enterprise spectrum. Then after 2020 and in pandemic situations, our focus was emission reduction, entrepreneurship, investment, and capacity was a big focus, where we brought a lot of youth into the entrepreneurship arena, and also focused on incubation hubs where we can create more enterprises and entrepreneurs focusing on climate actions and green recovery. I'm just going to relay one of the interventions over the past decade where we have really focused on entrepreneurship development. This is under the Resilient Mountain Solutions initiatives, and our interventions actually started on 2019 in developing this entrepreneurial ecosystem in Bhutan. The focus was promoting green enterprises with the aim to sustainable production and consumption. capacity building to make enterprise green and resilient, mentorship to strengthen resilient entrepreneurial ecosystem, networks and platform for innovations and investment, as well as policy support. A big policy support aspect was embedded in this entrepreneurial ecosystem development, where we were closely with Department of Cottage and Industry to develop a startup center in Bhutan to really promote entrepreneurial ecosystem. Therefore, in this, we incubated about 60 innovative green enterprises with 20 plus women-led businesses, and we promoted women to really come forefront in business arena. We developed operational manual to run incubation centers, which has helped government to really look into various other incubation center possibilities in Bhutan and use our operation manual, which we co-developed with the government. We also have a business health checkup tool that was developed together with private sector in Nepal, Entrepreneur Private Limited, to really look into financial prudency with economic, social, and environment value creations. There, we've also done 300 plus green and inclusive jobs that has been created, and 100 plus capacity development programs have been organized. We also linked with various banks, and CSI Bank is one of the forthcoming bank who promoted soft loans for these green enterprises and also access to green finances. We co-developed mentorship guidebook, and 30 plus mentors have from national and international have been in the roster to support entrepreneurs there in Bhutan. We also co-developed technology database platform to promote resilient energy efficient technologies to mechanize the processes as well as making them green. A daycare center was also promoted and developed to really promote women entrepreneurs in this startup center. To sum up, our focus has been really climate resilient entrepreneurship with green finance, process innovations, and also climate actions to green recovery. Entrepreneurial ecosystem was also a big focus as we developed and designed, and also focus on renewable technology, JESI partnership, enterprise development. Platforms and networks has been a very integral part to really reach out to the global agendas like SDG and Paris agreements, as well as various regional platforms. And today, COP26 also has been an opportunity to really present our work and promote our work there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that was a good overview about resilient enterprises and what's happening around the landscape. And we are running really late, so I would request we have another pre-recorded presentation from Dr. Neera Pradhan Shrestha, and she'll be presenting on adaptation solutions in terms of disaster risk reduction and management.
This is Neera Shrestha Pradhan, Senior Water and Adaptation Specialist and Program Coordinator, Koshi Basin Initiative at ICIMOD. Today, I'm going to talk about adaptation solutions for disaster preparedness and early action. If you look at the mountain communities in the HKH region, they live in multi-hazard environment. And on average, if we look at it, then more than 36,000 people are killed and 178 million affected each year due to natural hazard in this region. When we look at different types of natural hazards, the number of events and economic losses are most due to floods. But the communities are the first responders to these natural hazards and floods. When we look at the different type of communities, then when disaster hits them, they affect more women, children, elderly, and disabled. We have to reach to the communities, the most vulnerable people, if we talk about solutions, adaptation solutions in this region on disaster risk management. Community-based flood early warning system, we call it CBFUSE, implemented by ICIMOD, is one of the solutions that reaches the most vulnerable communities. And it is also one of the UNFCCC's Momentum for Change 2014 Lighthouse Activity Award winning project. It is based on a very simple technology. A telemetry-based system is placed in the upstream in the riverbank. And as the water level rises, the system detects the water level and sends the data to the data upload unit, which is also placed in the upstream on the caretaker's house. And the information is sent downstream by the caretaker to the downstream vulnerable communities, as well as the local government and other line agencies for the dissemination of the information. This is a very low-cost technology and provides almost real-time information. And it is based on the upstream and downstream linkages, and the communities are involved in operating it. It is based on the 4 different key elements of early warning, that is risk, knowledge and scoping, community-based monitoring and early warning, dissemination and communication, response capability and resilience. However, our decade-long experience also showed that sustainability mechanism is very important and needs to be thought through in every step of this CB fuse. And when we are talking about sustainability, it has to be financial, institutional, technological, and social sustainability of the system. There are 3 levels of information. Level 1 with blue color code, no siren, no, water is normal, and no action is required. Level 2 is yellow with beeping sound, stay alert, water level is rising, and you have to be prepared. And level 3 is the danger level with red color code, continuous ringing of the siren, and it shows that the flood is coming and you need to evacuate immediately. But this early warning system, the information is also showed online in the graph as shown below. Recently, we have also started WhatsApp to send the information from upstream to downstream communities so that the information can be disseminated to larger communities downstream. Now, some of the good examples of early warning system on the ground. In 2017, September, across India and Nepal border, the Ratu River had seen a big flood. So when the flood water level rised in the Nepal side in Lalgarh, as you can see in the figure, the caretaker in this site in Lalgarh in Nepal was able to send the information to the downstream communities and the local government line agencies. And he was able to send the information across the border also. You can see here in Bittamod in India side. And as the water level reached Bittamod, the communities, the vulnerable communities in Bittamod was able to get 8 hours of early warning lead time to prepare themselves so that they were able to save their livestock, save the life of people. This shows that upstream and downstream, even the cross-border information sharing through this early warning system has helped save lives and livelihood. In one of the rivers in Nepal, Khado River, the local rural municipalities came together and they were able to gather money for financial sustainability and the basket fund. We are able to create an enabling environment for learning and sharing, where we are able to bring in the local communities, the caretakers, local government line agencies, and the disaster management authority in one forum where they discussed about the importance of early warning system at the community level, which gives information, early information and timely information for preparedness to the communities. And in this COVID situation, it is also important to look at the COVID challenges. And in order to address that, we have been working with the local communities and the local partners to prepare themselves with the double trouble. It's the flood and also the COVID condition. In this way, we have been able to successfully scale up this adaptation solution on community-based flood early warning system. Starting in around 2010 from Assam, we are able to now outscale it in Bihar, in India, in Nepal, in Afghanistan, and also in Pakistan. Recently, we have been able to go out from HKH region and we have been implementing this early warning system in Malawi with the local partners with support from UNDP funds. In order to be successful in adaptation solution, we have to have coordination and cooperation, collaboration at various levels. it is very important to transfer the technology at the local level so that we are able to produce local resource person. Capacity enhancement and awareness at different level is very important about early warning so that they can act, they can prepare when the flood comes. And showcasing good practices is also important so that we can showcase it to the policy makers to have a policy enabling the early warning system at local level. And more importantly, this is the sustainability plan so that after the project phases out, the system still continues and will be able to send information to save life and livelihood of the vulnerable communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nirati, for this wonderful presentation that is very relevant to our region. And because we are short of time, I would like to call upon Mr. Ram Gopal Kharbuja. He's the Joint Secretary at the Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, Nepal. Sir, because we are running quite late, I would request you to please stick to the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pradhanji, for providing me this opportunity. I like to start quickly. Please, next. I am talking about the long-term strategy plan in Nepal to what are the main features of that. In that long-term strategies it is approved by the Nepal government just recently in October 2021, and it has high ambitions to have a net zero emission by 2045, and it has focuses mainly 5 key sectors: energy, transport, clean cooking, agriculture, forest land use and others, and then waste. The space it has also the long term strategies. It has specified the milestones with the given targets in each sectors, and it has considers 10 thematic working groups, thematic sustainable development goal in Nepal, so that it can be synchronized with the development goal as well. The energy sectors, I am talking much more about the energy sectors development. At Nepal, we have now generally we have about 2200 megawatt hydropower projects installed capacity, out of which about 95% of the power is from hydro, means it is the installed capacity, and we have another that the power projects from solar as well, then the mini micro hydropower projects as well. We have about 95% of the powers are that from renewable and the clean, as I have already told. And power projects, numerous power projects are under the constructions, and we will get additional 4700 megawatt within next 5 years, means by 2025, and another additional 7915 megawatt by 2030. And these hydropower projects, they are built by private sectors, government sectors, and some private partnership collaborations in Nepal. Another that 16,081 megawatt of hydropower projects of the installed capacity, it has been under the study again. And from this, I want to show that this Nepal will be very much more progressing in hydropower development within few decades. The NDC, second NDC that has been submitted in 2020 to UNFCCC, it has targeted that by 2030, Nepal will have installed capacity up to 15,000 megawatt, including 5,000 megawatt. It is the unconditional, and then remaining 10,000 megawatt. It is the conditional. We have mentioned in the second NDC report. About up to that 15,000 megawatt, it should be 5 to 10% of that hydropower. The power system should be from clean energy, means alternative energy, means here mini, micro, solar, and wind, as well as bioenergy also. And if we look at the power consumption trend here, the total energy demand of the power consumption in Nepal, it is fulfilled only about only about 7% from the clean energy. That means electrical energy and the renewable energy. Electrical energy means most of the electricity that is generated from the hydropower, and renewable means here the power which are generated from mini hydropower, micro hydropower projects, solar and biogases and others, and which are generally installed in the remote areas. It is off-grid part of that. Okay, we have we have targeted that up to 15% of the total energy demand will be satisfied by the clean energy by the next time. The long-term strategy has been fixed have been fixed milestones and the targets, and we have considered two WAM means with existing measures and with additional measure scenarios. With additional measure scenario, we will have a 51.1 gigawatt of hydropower projects by 2030. Now I am talking to go to the e-cooking and the clean cooking in the LTS system. Yeah, our studies shows that the most emissions that is coming from the residential use, that the residential use of the power for cooking, and next is from the transport, and then next is from the industrial areas. And the cooking energy is nearly 5% of the household use the electricity induction stoves at present, and about 23% of the households use LPG gas as another clean cooking energy in the Nepal, and remaining 78% of the households use a biomass, that is a firewood, agriculture residue, and animal dung for the cooking energy. Uh, Now, the second NDC report, we have given the milestone that by 2030, ensure 25% of the households should use the electric stoves as the primary mode of the cooking. And by 2030, ensure 15% of the total energy demand is supplied by the clean energy sources. The long-term strategies LTS milestone has also fixed that for the e-cooking system, it should reduce 9% and 45%, 47% emission reduction in 2030 and then 2050 respectively. Now the main action is requirement in the cooking system is the enhancement of the clean fuel access and efficiency improvement in the clean cooking system, that the energy used for the cooking system. The initiatives, we have done a lot of projects for distributing energy, clean cooking energy systems, that stoves distributions. And we have got the one projects about the 49.1 million which is approved by the GCF, and it has a aim to provide 1 million people to have a clean energy access for the cooking. And also electricity regulation committee in Nepal, it has decided to reduce the tariff from effective from October 2021, so that we can promote the electricity in cooking purpose. Now next I want to just give some slides to have a potential of the cross-border renewable power trade. This NEA, Nepal Electricity Authority, they have done a sort of analysis, and it shows that the power simulation studies, depending upon the power production and the power demand in the future as well. And in that studies, it shows that the power demand in the Nepal will be satisfied by the hydroelectricity production for domestic purpose. And from 2021 2022 we will have excess energy for wet season, but we will have some import. We have to import the electricity from the neighboring country up to 2025. By 2025 we will be sufficient electricity even for all the seasons, and we will have excess energy, and we want to have that excess energy to export to the neighboring country. And nowadays we have also some sort of the arrangement for import and export of the electricity with neighboring countries, that is especially India. And that import and export is mainly for now importing purpose. It has been agreed. Now we want to have some modification for exporting the power to neighboring countries. Now 12 at the present moment 12 transmission lines has been used for the power transmissions, and some sort of the agreement, G2G bilateral agreement, mutual institutional agreement, competitive bidding and tariff agreement has been, tripartite agreement has been started for accelerating export of electricity to the neighboring countries. These are the just pictures that I want to show. Now the efforts, the SARC, we did government did some efforts for the transportation export of the electricity to the neighboring countries. First SARC framework agreement that was carried out in 2014, and it provides the opportunity or platform to have interconnectivity with the SARC region. Then SARC power trade PTA between Nepal and India has been signed in 2014, and which ultimately provides us the regional markets. And another BIMSTEC memorandum of understanding, that is MOU, has been signed in August 2018. It also provides the BIMSTEC grid interconnection for in this region, that is especially Bangladesh, India and Nepal. And Nepal, Bangladesh, we have different series of meetings, and the Bangladesh shows their intention to import 9,000 megawatt from the Nepal by 2030. And Nepal and China also, we have some sort of MOU about the energy cooperation in 2018, and one transmission line, that is 400 kV transmission line from Galchi to Kerung. It has been under the study for exporting the energy to the China as well. In conclusion and expectation, what we conclude that the power export is possible from 2021 for the wet season, and while for all the season from 2025, and it helps to reduce the trade balance and contributes significantly for decarbonization of energy, not only in Nepal but also in neighboring countries, that is India, Bangladesh at present. And we need about 3.4 US dollar for the unconditional fulfillment of the unconditional target, which has been stated in the NDC, second NDC for energy sectors, and additional 25 billions of US dollar is required to fulfill the all the targets for energy sectors. For LTS implementations, the WAM and WAM scenarios, it has been given that for all WAM scenarios, we will need about 130 billion US dollar from 2021 to 2050, while for a WAM scenario, we'll need about $195 billion from 2021 to 2050. We need a such huge investment for that. And we want to have some accounting of the carbon credit contributed by the cross-border renewable energy trade, because this hydro, it is clean energy, and we need to have some carbon credit accounts, and it will further helps to increase the investment in power plant generation, transmission, and distributions. The international forum like a COP should show the solidarity to create the conducive environment for promoting cross-border power trade, in increased investment to expand the green renewable energy in these our regions. And this is the best opportunity to have some conducive environment for the power trade among cross-border power trade in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram Gopal sir, for this presentation. I think it reflects quite well with what Nepal is planning to do, especially after what the Honorable Minister had announced early in the morning regarding the long-term strategy and the targets. I'm sorry, I know it has been a presentation-heavy session, but I still have one more presentation which I will be doing. I'll try to wrap it up quite fast, and thank you so much for your patience. So I'll be presenting on behalf of our red team back at ICIMOD, that is Dr. Bhaskar Karki and Robin Bhattrai. And Red Plus, of course, is a very important topic for COP and climate change. So the region, of course, in the previous sessions, it has already been emphasized the importance of this region within our HKH countries, but also beyond. And of course, in the mountains, communities are very highly dependent on nature and especially on forest resources. It has important habitats for species of global importance, including having, like was mentioned earlier, even 4 biodiversity hotspots within the region and numerous important bird areas. Similarly, when you look at the landscape, I mean, because highly mountainous, there are scattered forests and high transaction cost in working in this region. And forests are, of course, vital, and there's a need for watershed protection in the area. And at least I would like to mention in this in my presentation, there are major NDC goals from regional member countries regarding afforestation and plantations that will come in my slides later. This is quite a older study done by FAO and later on by ICIMOD as well. We need to have a more updated study on this, but this is giving you an idea of the regional capacity of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, not the countries itself, the region, and how much carbon dioxide or carbon sinks it provides. For instance, you can see that there's a possibility of 3,000 to 4,000 metric tons of emission reduction just from avoided deforestation and degradation. This was, of course, a much older data, but this is still a significant amount, especially because the HKH region is not emitting that much, but there is a huge potential of avoiding the emissions, but also adding to carbon sinks of the region, but also globally. These are some of what countries are saying in terms of either afforestation or in terms of RED plus in the region. You can see the examples as they're on the screen. Bangladesh has, of course, the Bangladesh National RED Strategy, National Forest Monitoring Systems. Bhutan has pledged to remain carbon neutral, which the minister in the morning had also mentioned, and it's pretty much in the constitution and it's in the NDCs and in the climate policy. India has, of course, their NDC targets of carbon sinks of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. Nepal's targets have also been already mentioned, so I will not go into details. Pakistan has large-scale tree plantation programs. This again was mentioned by the minister in the morning session as well. And I mean, I think they are quite ambitious and very needful targets that our regional member countries have in terms of forests. What we at ICIMOD with our regional member countries and government as partners have been doing is in red is first, I mean, you can see the outcome, what we envision and what our expected outcomes are from the RED program at ICIMOD. I mean, we're looking to improve cooperation among regional member countries. This cooperation is very important for the region. It's for ecosystem management, but having enhanced and equitable livelihood benefits contributing to global conservation agendas. The vision is also there. I will just run through the slide. You can all have a look. And ICIMOD's pledge to support afforestation and reforestation within the region is as on the screen. I mean, we support state and provincial governments in developing RED Plus action plans, which we have been doing in Nepal and in some states in India. Leverage carbon finance and afforestation and reforestation from private sector in our regional member countries. Data generation for MRV, including forest fire monitoring. Promote south to south learning for regional cooperation, but also learning what each country is doing. Also to customize support to local communities for participating in UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. That is very important. Some examples of what we are doing in terms of RED Plus is, of course, you can see pictures, but also some strategies. We have been contributing to the government of Nepal, but the government of India also in terms of their national RED Plus strategies. We have developed guidelines for some RED Plus action plans. And in that case, these are just some examples. We have also been helping the state of Uttarakhand and Sikkim in preparing their RED Plus action plan. This is similar in Myanmar. Below, you can see some pictures of taking an inventory of the forest and things related. But we do face immense challenge, and this is also posed due to climate change. This is a picture of instances of forest fire around April, May this year itself, and you can see the number of fires all around the subcontinent. And this is actually challenging, especially with countries having huge targets in emission reduction from forestry sector. This is a challenge not just for the region. I know a couple of years back, Amazon had its issues. Australia a couple of years had huge wildfires as well. It's very difficult to control, but this is a challenge we face within the region as well, in terms of REDD+ and in terms of forest fires in general. A way forward, this is my last slide, is that, of course, to support countries to make transition from readiness to implementation phase, support countries in meeting their NDC targets, and facilitate countries to access carbon finance for enhanced forestry sector investment. Thank you. And I would also like to, as we have run out of time, I'm sorry we will not be able to have any question answer session, because the next session is already running late. Thank you so much for your patience and for listening to us. I hope these presentations and the cases that were provided were very interesting to everyone. Thank you.